Bolivia's contested election descends into civil unrest. Even before the results of an independent audit are complete, people are demanding the president resign. I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is the protest movement calling for Evo Morales to step down. If you happened to be in Bolivia recently and asked Siri in Spanish who the president was, it would respond with, quote, "The dictator of Bolivia is Evo Morales." Latin America's longest-serving leader wasn't even supposed to be allowed to run for a fourth time. That was until he ignored the results of a referendum on limiting presidential terms. And now many Bolivians are questioning whether Morales won last month's elections fair and square. In the 3 weeks since the vote, things have turned ugly. While many around the country are protesting peacefully, others, from both sides of the political coin, have not. Opposition supporters have torched election officers. A mayor and member of Morales' party was attacked by a mob who doused her with red paint, cut off her hair, and marched her through town barefoot. Adam Pletz reports on what sparked the violence and why each side is blaming the other for it.
Violent demonstrations on the streets of La Paz. At least 3 people have been killed and dozens more wounded. Protesters accuse President Evo Morales of stealing his election victory last month through fraud. After an unexplained 24-hour pause in the ballot count, there was a decisive shift in Morales' favor. Regional politician Luis Fernando Camacho, who is the president of Santa Cruz's Civic Committee, has become a symbol of the opposition.
We are very sorry. What we want is for peace to return to our country, for hatred, confrontation and racism among Bolivians to be set aside, but above all, for us to have a country with peace and hope.
Camacho has said he will present Morales with a letter of resignation for the president to sign. But the socialist leader, who is in his 4th term, seems intent on putting up a fight.
Y cuando no pueden ganar las elecciones, inventan el término fraude. Ahora nos damos cuenta que no había sido fraude, sino golpe de Estado.
Morales has backed an audit of the vote by the Organization of American States, which is expected in mid-November. Opposition leaders have questioned the validity of the election audit. If it confirms Morales' victory, demonstrators have indicated they will continue regardless.
In respect to the Constitution, there has been fraud. We have called for new elections. We want Evo Morales to go for good.
Morales is Bolivia's first indigenous president and has loyal support in many rural communities.
We are calling for justice, prison for Camacho. Someone needs to pay for their crimes.
If Camacho succeeds in delivering a resignation letter for Morales, it looks likely to remain unsigned. As the nation awaits the results of the election audit, will Morales hold on to power, or is his time in office limited? Adam Pletz, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now is a man who's spent a lot of time with the president. Martin Sivak is the author of Evo Morales, The Extraordinary Rise of the First Indigenous President of Bolivia. And he joins us from Buenos Aires. In one of Bolivia's capitals, La Paz, we have Diego Ayo. He's a professor of political science at the Higher University of San Andres. Also in La Paz is Raul Penaranda, a journalist, author and advocate for press freedom in Bolivia. He's been called a traitor and a spy by the government. I'm intrigued to know why. But before that, Raul, to you, is Evo Morales' democratic legitimacy in question?
I think it is. Thank you for having me. I think it is because Morales should not have the chance of being in this election. He lost a referendum, and the constitution could not be changed because of that. And these 4 terms is then forbidden for him. So he is running against the will of the people that was shown in that referendum.
Why do they call you a traitor and a spy, sir?
Well, because I'm a critical journalist, and my mother is Chilean, and they said that I was actually spying and trying to destabilize the government and coordinating my activities with the Chilean government. This happened because my stance and my positions as a journalist were very independent.
Okay. Martin Sivak, to you, as somebody who knows the president, who wrote about the president, okay, clearly it must be disappointing to you to see bloodshed on the streets and all the trouble that's going on right now. In your eyes, is his legitimacy as president in question as well?
Of course, we have here a huge political crisis provoked by an election that at this point has a lot of irregularities. However, I think that we need to be very cautious in terms of presenting him as a dictator. At this point, the fraud was not already proved. So, as the recovery
you know what?
of the Bolivian society, not of Evo Morales.
Right. Martin, we're going to come back to you in a couple of minutes. We got the gist of what you said there, but we lost you a little bit near the end. But one of the points I want to pick up on, and hopefully the line will smooth itself out there. Diego Ayo. Martin's saying, yes, there's problems, there were irregularities, but let's be cautious about calling the man a dictator. Can you accept that?
I can accept that, of course. I can accept that. We needed to separate some categories. We needed to understand that at this moment we have three kinds of government, three scenarios in which we could land. The first scenario is the democratic scenario. It's the scenario we are needing. We are trying to get as the final result. The second scenario is this kind of competitive authoritarianism, is this kind of regime that is a little bit less than a dictatorship. And the third option is the dictatorship. Now, we need to kill more people to be a dictatorship.
And hopefully that doesn't happen.
I would say,
right.
I hope it. I hope it. Of course, I hope it.
Are you open to the idea, Diego, that maybe the election was bungled, was mismanaged when they went quiet for a day or so? Maybe they just screwed up, but they didn't rig it.
No. They make a big fraud. We could not count just this election. We needed to understand that it is a kind of process that was started at 2016 with a referendum in which Evo Morales lost. He lost. 4 years ago, he lost this referendum and he couldn't be reelected. That's something we needed to say. And the next years, 2017, and 2018, they talk with the Constitutional Tribunal and they talk with the Electoral Tribunal, not just trying to make them weak, just ordering them to stop making things for the benefit of all Bolivians, Right. And this election is the final result of all this combination of things.
It's been building up for a long time. That seems to be clear. Raul, one of the more disturbing incidents that we've all witnessed over the past few days, you have a small town mayor really roughed up by a crowd, public humiliation really. Patricia Arque, the mayor of Vinto, now a member of the president's party, as far as I'm aware, also of Indigenous extract. It was more than just this idea of, protesting against somebody's policies or support of Morales. There was an element of a ritual public humiliation. Would it be fair to say that there was an element of racism connected to that, and that there might be an element of racism within the opposition movement?
Yes, I think so. I think that there is in this country much of racism. It is sad to say that, but we have those instincts. It is sad. You're seeing now the scenes there. The mayor was really humiliated, maybe beaten, we don't know, painted, and this is a horrible scene. there is an explanation. There is no justification with this, but there is an explanation. And the mob thought that this woman gave information about the protesters, and one protester was killed, got killed. So the mob was really angry about this, thinking that she was the person that made this protester finally killed. But anyway, there is no justification for this violence.
Right. Martin Sivak, would that be something to keep in mind when we hear Morales and those close to him, the vice president and others, come out and say the other side wants to stir racial animosity here? So there seems to be a feeling that this has been hard fought from our end. When we came to power, we made all these changes, we gave dignity to indigenous people, and those people who are protesting this election want to roll all of this back.
Yeah. Let me step back, and the government is saying that there is a coup d'etat. I don't believe that there's a coup d'etat. There's a lot of anger against the government. And I would say that part of that anger is racially motivated, because as Raul said, there's a lot of racism. And for many, many Bolivians, still it's unbearable to deal with Evo Morales in president, because he's indigenous, because he comes from a very poor social background, etc., etc., etc. And the new like paying a lot of attention to Camacho, because Camacho is emerging as the new Bolsonaro in Bolivia, with some statements that can be really a contribution for more violence.
Diego Ayo, is Camacho emerging as a new Bolsonaro in Bolivia?
It could be a new Bolsonaro. He is really a religious guy, But we have to say emphatically that it's not a totally racial motivated problem. That's something we need to stress on. The President Morales is saying every single day that there is a racist problem, and they want to create this racist problem. They want to separate us with these excuses, with these arguments. But we need to understand, for example, that in, San Julian in Santa Cruz, there's another department, we could work with indigenous people, with the peasants, very, very, with all the things under the table. We could work with them. President Morales, he's trying to separate us. He stays every single second, every single day. They are trying to humiliate us. They are trying to attack us. They are trying to. Now, that's not something completely real. It's, of course, real. We are offending them. Now, the fight has ended at this point, at a racist point. But it's not something we need to keep moving, no?
All right. So, Raul, has the former president, Carlos Mesa, the man who says he won the election, and the protest leader, Luis Fernando Camacho, have they not maybe condemned the racially motivated attacks and protests enough? Have they not been clear enough to say, listen, this is not about us wanting to overturn the first indigenous leader of the country?
I'm not sure. I think that both are trying to really condemn these signs of violence and racism. I think that they are. I don't think that Mesa nor Camacho are racist at all. Camacho is more Catholic, like more maybe like a right-wing kind of a leader. But I don't see them as racist at all. And I think that they are trying. Of course, they are pushing the government. They are trying to make big manifestations and protests. But I don't see them as racist motivated.
Diego Ayo, it would be stupid for the president to resign before the OAS comes out with its full audit, right? He needs to stay put for now.
No, of course, we need some kind of help. We need international help. At this case, we need the word of the OAS. No, of course, we need this kind of support. Yes, yes.
Martin Sivak,
Evo Morales.
Certainly, I wonder what Martin thinks, knowing the man. Martin, you wrote a book about him, and I stress again, you spent time with him, right? So trying to understand how he thinks. If the OAS or OAS comes out and says, yes, the vote was not legitimate, we need to have a rerun of the vote, is he the type of leader who will say, yes, absolutely, I accept, let's go to the polls again?
Mm-hmm. As you know, in this crisis, in every government, there are hardliners and softliners. The hardliners are saying that the government shouldn't pay attention to the final decision of the OAS. And the softliners, they do believe that in that case, there should be a ballotage. The president so far is acting in a very defensive way, and he knows very well at the same time that if the OAS says that election is fine not to be done the second round, the consequence of that can be like huge social mobilization that can bring a lot of violence and more anger. So at this point, we don't know if the hardliners or the softliners would win.
Raul Penaranda, hardliners or softliners? I mean, okay, this is presupposing that the OAS says there are irregularities. I'm also intrigued. Maybe answer this in two ways, Raul. OAS comes out and says we need a rerun of the vote because there were too many irregularities. Will Morales accept? That's one. The other one is OAS comes out and says, you know what, the irregularities were not enough to invalidate the entire vote, so this stands. Will the opposition accept that?
I think that answering first your second question, if the OAS says that, I think that the country would go through a situation of much more violence, with more protests, and I think that the people would really be anger and maybe hopefully not, but more violence and death. And answering your first question, I think that Morales is not ready to go to a second round because some polls show that he will lose that. And we cannot imagine Morales accepting a defeat and going home. Maybe, hopefully, that would happen. But I think that it is a possibility that has less chances because Morales is in power for so many years. He didn't accept the referendum result. And I think that maybe he would do the same thing now. But hopefully, he would accept that and we could go to a second round. I think a second round could be a peaceful solution for the country.
Diego?
I think we need this second round. No, it's an imperative. We really need this second round, and we need to wait for OAS' final decision. But I personally think that OAS will say we need this kind of solution with some kind of proofs of weaknesses. You have said that difference in two kind of positions, but finally they are gonna say clearly we need this second round for Bolivia. No?
Martin Sivak, do you fear that this is descending into a Maduro versus Guaido type of situation of a crisis of legitimacy on two opposing sides?
No, at all. We need to remember that when Evo Morales became the president of Bolivia, it was presented as a sort of the representative of Chavez, and Bolivia would come another Venezuela, and they used all the time to diminish his popularity and his social and economic reforms that were so important, and that are the facts that explain why Morales is still very popular. You know, after 13 years in office, he received a lot of social support. So I think that we should avoid that because Bolivia is not Venezuela. There are many, many differences, and hopefully, you know, there's going to be a way to find a solution avoiding the drama of Venezuela.
Raul Penaranda, for those, well, such as myself, in asking the question included, who look for parallels with situations like Venezuela? Are we completely off the mark?
I think that there are similarities in the sense that Morales and Maduro are authoritarian leaders. We could call Maduro really a dictator now. Evo Morales is an authoritarian leader. And if Morales wants to stay in power, maybe he has to have, he will need more power, more strength, and maybe he will need to repress more the opposition leaders and the media. And then we could see, right now we are in a situation that we are much better than Venezuela. In Bolivia we have much more freedom of speech, of expression, etc. But I think that maybe if Morales keeps power and he really stays against the will, for example, of the OAS of doing this second round, maybe we could find Bolivia in a situation where Morales could be increasingly authoritarian.
Diego Ayo, I'm curious about international support here. We have the OAS, so the Organization of American States. They come in, they're an authority, they're respected by both sides here. But beyond that, when we talk of countries such as the United States, for example, and others, is it better if they just leave Bolivia alone, or maybe would it be a good thing, in your opinion, if they start to wade in and give their opinion at this point?
Of course, my opinion is they have to assist us. We couldn't resolve that just as a country without the international support. That's something impossible to say. Evo Morales has all the power. Evo Morales has made an election with all the money in his own position. That's something that we need to know.
But do you fear? Sorry to interrupt you. But do you fear being labeled as a pro-imperialist by asking for American help?
It's not just the American help. We need the European help. We need, of course, this kind of unanimous, of general help to help us. We don't need just the United States. That's something I need to insist on, to stress on. But of course, we need this kind of general assisting power, no, for us. Of course.
Okay, so Martin Sivak, with more American and European help, for example, would that maybe strengthen Morales among his base to say that I'm under attack from foreign powers?
Yeah, at this point, I think that this is a crisis that, of course, has an international impact, but needs to be resolved within Bolivia. And I think that we need to bring to the table the fact that both the new president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, the president of Mexico, and other center-left presidents of Latin America have been endorsing Evo Morales. So I'm saying that Evo Morales is not internationally isolated, and the fact that this is contemporary to the Chilean and the Ecuadorian crisis would at the same time help the international community to be following more carefully what is going on in the next weeks.
Raul Penaranda, does the fact that the Argentine and Mexican governments are leaning towards Morales make this a more kind of balanced international push and pull if it comes to foreign influence on this situation?
It is a very good question. Yes, Argentina and Mexico are supporting Morales, but I think that in general, the Latin American leaders plus European Union and other European countries are leaning more towards a solution that could be a second round, and that they are saying Morales that maybe they would not recognize his government, maybe probably in the future if he does not. So I think that this is the worst moment for Morales in his presidency, maybe nationally and also internationally, because now he doesn't have the respect of for example, the European Union has been very supportive of Morales in these almost 14 years of power until now. So I think that even though he has some supports, I think that in general, he is in a situation of weakness in that sense.
Yeah, and just a reminder, Morales reacting on Twitter to some of the recent developments, saying, I express my deep regret for the death of young Limbert Guzman, one of the 3 who died, an innocent victim of violence promoted by political groups that encourage racial hatred among Bolivian brothers. I reiterate my call for social peace. Let's see how things are going to transpire. All eyes on the OAS report. We will no doubt revisit this story when they come back with their recommendations. Diego Ayo, Raul Penaranda, and Martin Sivak, it's been a pleasure talking to you here on the Newsmakers. Come back anytime. Thanks so much. I learned so much from you about the current situation in Bolivia. Well, thank you for watching on the Newsmakers. See you next time. Bye-bye.